Listen guys, very rarely do I see the need to make full-on YouTube videos on one weapon specifically. Normally I like to cover complete weapon sets at a time, but this weapon has flown so under the radar that I feel the need to highlight it in its own video. Today we're going to be talking about the Empty Vessel, yet another lightweight frame grenade launcher, and when I tell you that this thing is better than Salvager's Salvo, at least in my opinion, I'm being very serious. A few days ago we covered the fallen Splicer weapons and ranked the ignition code at number 1, as not only was it a kinetic grenade launcher, but it also rolled with slide shot and vorpal, making it not only good for ad clear but also a very substantial weapon for DPS on high health bars. Today we have a similar situation with Empty Vessel, and the differences that it has between itself and Salvo are pretty drastic, and I would argue Empty Vessel is a much better GL overall whenever it comes down to it. Now, before we jump into the video, I just want to remind you guys that if you enjoy my content today, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel. We've been growing like crazy ever since Season of the Chosen, and I don't want to stop anytime soon. Subscribe and join us here on the channel, and I promise you won't regret it. Or at least maybe you won't. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into talking about Empty Vessel and why I'm singing its praises so much. First things first, how do you get your hands on this weapon? Well, it's pretty simple, just play Vanguard Strikes. Last season we had an exploit on the Hollowed Layer Strike to farm up Vanguard weapons like Royal Entry, but unfortunately this was patched, so playing Vanguard Strikes like a normie seems like the only option right now. Now, once you get your hands on an Empty Vessel, you've been playing some strikes for a little bit, you have your ghost mod on for extra drops, you get this thing to drop for you, you're gonna notice two things immediately. One, this grenade launcher is in the energy slot. A main reason that I praised ignition code so much was because it wasn't a grenade launcher that was in the energy slot. So what's the big deal here with Empty Vessel? Well, that leads me to my second thing, which is that this GL does solar damage specifically. For those of you guys that don't know, there's a perk in Destiny called Wrath of Rasputin. This allows any solar splash damage to cause the spawn of a Warmind cell. So I'm pretty sure you guys can see where I'm going with this. Using Empty Vessel with this mod equipped allows it to do what Salvo does, which is ad clear, but Empty Vessel does it 1,000 times better, especially when stacking it with other Warmind mods, which we'll be talking about in a bit. That's without even considering the perks that can roll on Empty Vessel, so let's go ahead and take a look at those really quick. Now, you'll notice right away that Empty Vessel has quite the perk selection, and getting the perfect god roll looks to be a bit of a long shot. But here's the Empty Vessel that I'm using for the background gameplay. As you can see, this roll isn't nearly as optimal as it can be. I mean, it doesn't even have spike nades on it, yet I still feel as though I'm outperforming Salvo by a long shot. With that being said, don't be down if you don't get the perfect 5 out of 5 roll that we're going to talk about. Now, we're going to go over two main PvE roles here, one of which is going to be for regular PvE like seasonal activities, strikes, dungeons, and some raids, and one is for like ultra in-game PvE, stuff like Grandmasters, as well as soon-to-be Master difficulty raids. Now, the first role I want to go over absolutely puts Salvo in the dirt, and that role is Spike Nades as your magazine, Ambitious Assassin in column 1, and Swashbuckler in column 2. See, Salvager's Salvo accomplishes its ad clear through using Ambitious Assassin to load more than one into the mag, and Chain Reaction to act as a damage perk to kill nearby enemies of the main target you shot at. With this roll on Empty Vessel, however, not only are you accomplishing better ad clear because of Ambitious Assassin and Warmind cells, but you're also dealing even more damage to the enemies you're shooting because of this direct damage buff with Swashbuckler. This is a double whammy. You're getting not only more damage overall because of Swash, but even better ad clear because, let's be honest, Warmind cells can clear whole ass battlefields when detonated instead of just killing enemies standing nearby to the one you shot, and that's kind of the reason why I'm using Battlegrounds gameplay currently. If you guys are curious for a specific build to use with this perk setup, or to just use Empty Vessel in general and get this kind of ad clear, this is what I ended up running. For the kinetic slot, just use whatever you're comfortable with. For me, it's the new Splicer auto rifle. Of course, use Empty Vessel as your energy weapon, and I personally ran another weapon that can spawn Warmind cells to min-max a bit with the fact that I'm using so many mods. Xenophage would be an ultra strong pick for the heavy slot, but I think the Trial Sword with Chain Reaction is just too much fun to not use. For the mods, I used Power of Rasputin to give me more damage to enemies that are standing next to the Warmind cells I spawn. I also rocked Wrath of Rasputin to allow my GL cell to spawn Warmind cells in the first place, and this is by far the most important mod. If you don't have this mod, then you don't have a Warmind cell build, so make sure you have this one. Next up was Rage of the Warmind for the extra solar damage. I also used Global Reach for my Warmind cells to have farther range when exploded, and lastly I used Burning Cells for a bit of DOT damage for any surviving enemies after the initial blast. Of course, you don't have to spec this heavily into the build, but I like being extra and just decimating everything. The most practical way to run this grenade launcher would be to use Wrath of Rasputin as well as Global Reach. This will allow you to spawn Warmind cells to begin with, and have a pretty decent range on those Warmind cells for the least amount of energy possible on your armor. Anything outside of those two mods is a bit overkill, and you could better use your energy for things like Charge with Light mods if that's your thing. And of course, if you don't have these Warmind cell mods, make sure you check Ada1 every single day at reset, as she has a much higher chance of selling Warmind cells and Charge with Light mods than Banshee ever did in the past. So you should be able to fill out your collection much quicker than ever before. Just make sure that you check her every day at reset. Now, the other role that I want to talk about for this weapon is something the Salvo is just completely incapable of doing, and that's having something like auto-loading holster and disruption break for the high-end content. Especially with how crazy of GL mods that we have this season, this perk combination is going to be nuts for in-game content. Using a mod like Breach and Clear with this role will allow me to break the shield of a solar enemy, get the buff from disruption break, and also get the buff from Breach and Clear for when I swap to a kinetic to finish off the enemy. Auto-loading being there will just reload my weapon while I DPS the enemy, and then I can pull it back out to focus on the next, and etc. This one's a bit more of a niche role that I don't plan on using nearly as often, but I'd figure I'd mention it for the potential that it has in in-game PvE. I'm chasing both of these roles heavily, and it currently drives my want to even jump into playlist strikes to begin with. If you're wanting to maximize efficiency when it comes to farming this grenade launcher, this is what I suggest this season. Play Override until you're out of keys and ether, then equip your Ghost with Vanguard Prosperity for the extra drops, and farm out ether in the strike playlist until you're full on both keys and ether alike. That way you accomplish two goals at once by not only getting ready to hop back into Override to get yourself some more data and stuff for god rolls, but also having potential to get empty vessel drops simultaneously in your off time. With that being said though, that's about everything that I want to talk about in today's video. Empty Vessel is an absolute cracked weapon, and I don't see nearly enough people talking about it. Once I get the god roll, it'll easily replace my Salvager Salvo as my favorite grenade launcher, and I honestly can't wait for that day to come. So yeah guys, that's gonna do it for me today. Let me know what you all think about the Empty Vessel in the comments down below. If you did make it to this point in the video, I love you slightly more than the people that stopped watching before this point. No, who am I kidding? I love you a lot more. Okay, JK. Unless... Anyways, that's it for the video, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.